topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Good morning, listeners. It's Tuesday, and of course, I love to be here with y'all. So I want to share the kind of story I had shared with you probably in a few episodes back. I had shared, and it's a wonderful story. It doesn't, I love sharing the story all the time. So when I walk in our nature trails, there's this beautiful, beautiful person. She has become my friend, Jennifer. She usually goes on the bike, and she has so much enthusiasm and energy, just lights up my day. So she would say good morning energetically to everyone she came across. So one day I stopped her and I asked her that this is just amazing, and I wanted to share with you that you are an unsung hero. You are amazing. I'm looking forward to walking on this trail, and actually I look out for you. And she said, oh, that is really sweet. And I asked her if it was okay for me to share this in a blog, and she said sure. And I took a picture with her. You can check it out on Medium or LinkedIn, and I wrote a blog, and then we met up again. We have become really good friends. And then what she shared with me was that one of her friends said that, oh, he was walking on a trail and he would keep on saying good morning, and some people responded, and he wasn't sure if he wanted to continue doing that. And then she shared her story with him that it does make an impact. So the reason I'm sharing this story with you is to remember that when you're kind, don't look for a return. And just give kindness with no expectations. I guarantee you it will impact someone. And I thank you for your kindness, as I want to thank each and every one of you who have got our books, The Entrepreneur's Garden or The Expert to Influencer, because it will help you not only change your life, but it will help us together change other people's lives, because the partial of the profits that we get, we donate it to kiva.org, and it helps entrepreneurs. Well, thank you for being part of our family, and let's welcome our guest. Welcome, Samantha.
Thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, I'm excited to have you on the show. So share with us a moment or a person from your childhood that you even remember today who left a positive mark on you.
Well, I'll do one very near and dear to my heart. My mother. My mother has been a foundational rock for me since I've been really young. She always provided the space for me to fail, explore, discover. And those skills and those experiences have really given me fuel to tackle anything without any wavering. And she's just always there. And a lot of what you just shared, she does it from a place of gratitude and heart and kindness. And she does it because she really wants me to be bigger than I ever thought I possibly could. So yeah, my mother is definitely the rock on a lot of different aspects in my life.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I really like what you said, that she created that safe space for you to fail.
Mhm.
And doesn't matter wherever we are in life, whether it is teams or organizations, entrepreneurs, and even for yourself.
Mhm.
Because yes, all of these entities can create that safe space, but are you creating that safe space for yourself for you to fail? What a powerful thing to have in life. So as you grow up, share with us, where did your life take you?
Yeah, so sports is a really important piece of my life. I started playing at 4 years old, competitive at 8 years old, traveling the country, winning tournaments. So sports is definitely part of my cloth and fabric of who I am. And for a long time, I couldn't see beyond that. And what's interesting about that is sports is what I did, not who I am, but it gave me a lot of experiences. So as I grew up, I didn't have summers off. I had to give up a lot of different things to play for teams at the highest level. And those were the sacrifices that my parents made and allowed me the space to have that as well. Ended up getting a full scholarship to the University of Pittsburgh, and I ended up playing softball in college. And
Mm,
I had a really bleak resume because sports was year round for me. I didn't have internships. So
mm,
for me, my identity was solely through sport for a very long time because I had no peripheral or experience outside of sport. But there were so many skills that I acquired while in sport that I never knew would transition beyond the game. So for me, sports is such a huge parallel path for how I've amassed and been able to work for a Fortune 100 company, Honeywell. It's a $40 billion company off of 0 years of work experience, right? And it
yeah.
was really garnered with my sports background. And I majored in chemistry. So that was the other thing too. For me, it's scholar athlete. So it always encapsulated both the curiosity of learning and being a part of an institution that is doing bigger things, and also play at a high level. So I did that and ended up traveling the world, and I am here now.
Well, that's fantastic. So you said that you studied chemistry. So
Mhm.
on one side, you are a this fantastic sports athlete who sacrificed a lot because there's a lot of romance around sports. We think, oh, they, and of course, sports players do get that recognition and they get that notoriety. At the same time, people don't see everything that goes behind. So, sports and chemistry is an odd combination, usually, like, for people to kind of think about it. So, what drew you to chemistry?
So I was really creative. I've always had that part of my brain that really operated at a high level, and I like to be uncomfortable. I like to put myself in uncomfortable situations so I can perform at a higher level. So one of the things I wanted to garner more of was analytical skill sets.
Mm,
So for me, it really gave me versatility to challenge not only my mindset, but also give me a degree that's super versatile and could provide a parallel path into a multitude of different industries that I could leverage on top of my creative capacity.
hmm. So,
Yeah.
tell us about your corporate experience in Honeywell.
Oh, so this one's great because I never was in a role that existed before. That's pretty impactful. I've always been in roles that I have worked with leaders and created the role. And the day one of any role, I would always think, who could replace me for me, which is the sports part of me, right? And leadership
Mhm.
and collaboration and not getting comfortable with staying in place. But I was always provided the environment to do big things, think bigger than the traditional way that most corporations work. And I was very fortunate to have other leaders and be in proximity to effective leaders that allowed me the space,
Mhm.
allowed for me to fail as long as I didn't go off of the tracks. Because you are in a corporate environment and are a representation of a big enterprise, right? So I was always immersed around really, really strong individuals that didn't shy away from allowing me to make things my own. And I always learned with them how to have better executive presence while having higher highs and higher lows. So there's that delicate flow that you can think big, you can be action oriented, you can think with a big picture strategically, but at the same time, you need to be able to walk into doors and notice a room. And that was one of the things that I would say I really got in my corporate endeavors, and very unique versus the traditional pathway for most people that go into corporate America and get really tired and bogged down. I had a lot of coaching, a lot of resources put around me to thrive, not survive in that environment.
And that's fantastic. And that tells us what corporations can do.
Of course.
Because there's data after data. Excuse me. There's data after data that shows that unhappy employees lead to poor performance, and poor performance leads to loss in profits. And yes, corporations are for profit organizations. And it's important to focus on that point. You mentioned one thing, that I started working as if my job could be replaced. So many people who are in C-suite, or they may be like a manager, like, they're newly found manager, and they're like, oh, how can I create this kind of a strategy where I'm developing somebody else who will replace me? What will happen to me next? So how do you address that fear?
Well, it's really not about you. If you really are aligned with the values of the corporation and the business in which you're serving, it's bigger than any one person. And what's really important about innovation and curiosity, most corporations strive for it. They aim for that. They talk about intellectual curiosity, intelligent risk taking. They say like a lot of fancy words, but it's not being it, not being present to it, and providing the environment to not know what's next, right? The unknowingness is what shies people away from trying. And if you're truly curious, if you're truly trying to drive a culture of innovation and curiosity, that warrants the space to create and expand to include others to take your spot, take the foundation you've built, make it their own, and then pass that on. You may move horizontally. You may not fully move vertically. But if you bypass the ego part of the equation, which most people go after, right? The success, the power of moving up the ladder, a lot can happen, because there's a lot of value in horizontal moves to create space where someone can beat you to that C-suite, right? Because it's not about a title. It's really about, well, what is your highest aim and what are the values you stand in, so you can shoot for that purpose and know your role within the whole, which is a very different way of leading versus managing.
Absolutely. So what I'm hearing is, finding that you're talking about a handshake between the corporation, that, okay, on one side, you want to have innovation, and on one side, you want to grow as well. So kind of both coming together, and also thinking about gaining those skills, because when you're moving horizontally or laterally, you can still lead. There's no need for title. You can be a leader by example anytime. And as you accumulate and as you grow in that knowledge, and as you're understanding the workings of that organization, it's going to make you practically irreplaceable. I mean, of course, there is nothing like irreplaceable, but to a great extent. Is that what you're alluding?
Yeah, and it's around effectiveness over efficiency. So most corporations operate under being efficient, right? We want to hit these numbers at this certain time. We want to streamline. We want to simplify, all of those different things, which there's a place for it. But that's a very management way of orienting an organization, right? Leadership creates the space for you to collaborate with others, allow them to lean in, is not defined in time. And it's not based in authority. There is no power complex relative to effectiveness, right? Efficiency has a power complex related to it. So you're absolutely right. And I think it's easier said than done. And the concept is, you're not always going to get it right. How do you just fail faster when you don't get it right versus tolerating the problem or putting a Band-Aid on something in systems and process and people. And I think that's where things go sideways pretty fast with cultures.
You're absolutely right. Actually, recently, one of my clients, a smaller company with 100 people, and they had a very old system and technology. And they were like, oh, yeah, it's working, and we don't want to upgrade it. It's a lot of money. And it, again, goes back to efficiency. But what it did was, as we kind of did the risk assessment and risk management, that it could break anytime and it could impact things a lot. So when you talk about the fail forward fast, what we did was we sat down and created a plan where he could just create a small pilot where somebody like, who was providing a service to them could come and demonstrate that it would be effective and show the ROI. So that's one example. In your experience, how have you seen, whether it's individuals, leaders, or companies, if you can share a couple of stories around fail forward fast, that will be great.
So I'll give you in a multitude of different spaces so you can see how this translates, whether it be in the sports world, right? Whether it be in kind of Fortune 100 conglomerates that are in multiple markets. A lot of individuals, they want to make a name for themselves because they're proud, right? And it does come rooted from a good place more often than not. Obviously, you have some ego that plays into that, but people get tied, and they get tied emotionally to projects because they're pouring so much of their time that they're not spending with their family into this project. And there's a human behavior, there's psychology around getting tied to something and wanting to see the full end-to-end cycle of that and see it come to life. Sometimes what happens is it clouds a judgment. So for example, we were working on a project and everyone had a piece to say about the project. And it was, how do you enter the oil and gas industry, because we want the revenue in oil and gas. Oh, but I also really want to be in water security. So I need to figure out how to do both. And you had two different powers that may be coming at you. And it's like, how do you make everybody happy and be everything to everyone? Well, sometimes what happens is you carve a space that doesn't really fit within the strategy, and you have different inorganic or organic strategies where you acquire a technology versus build it. And you might make a decision that takes a cycle that you could do in 1 year and put it into 5 years. And now you're tolerating a problem because you're so worried about owning it and creating it from the ground up versus acquiring it. And you have some things like that. And you also have new product introductions, right? So this happens in R&D, research and development, quite a bit with project management and businesses that want growth faster. We want top line and bottom line faster, faster, faster. Well, in some industries, that cycle of new product introduction is longer. So there is very important that you have to gate post certain results and stay very stern and firm with those deliverable dates. Because if you're talking about creating a new molecule, that happens 10, 15 years. That doesn't happen in 10 months. It's not a software fast cycle business. So if you don't stay disciplined within that journey along the path, something that's going to take 10 years, which is already long, is now going to take 20 years because you're tolerating a problem versus pivoting. So, those have been very discrete examples. And then on the sports side, just to kind of bring it all to life, sometimes athletes struggle with failing outside of the game, meaning they can go into the gym and they can put a lot of weight on the bar and they, drop the bar because they've hit a threshold on their ability to lift that weight, right? We call it max day. But for some reason, when you're talking about life and trying something outside of sport, they're not even willing to put weight on a bar. So how can you do that in the gym and look crazy when you drop a bar, but you can't do that for your life to go pro in life? So it's an interesting dichotomy that really warrants understanding the psychology, the attitudes and behaviors, the biases in which lead to someone to be emotionally tied to these projects. And once you understand that, then you can reframe, you can unlearn, relearn, break down before you break through. And that's where the magic really happens.
So let's kind of go back. You said that they don't like failing outside of the sports. And then it happens similar to the organic professionals or entrepreneurs. It doesn't matter. Human psychology is the same. What is the reasoning behind it?
Fear is the thief of joy. And fear is yet to happen. It's in your mind. So understanding your mindset, understanding your conscious and subconscious, like it's extremely important, because there's things that you're getting immersed to and experiencing all day, every day, that are influencing the way you operate. And it's really important to be where your feet are and be very present to where you're at. Most people are not present to where they're at because they're focused on where they're going or what already happened to them, which is the thief of joy, versus being consciously present to what's in front of you. Because we cause a lot more trouble for ourselves, because the data is very, very clear. It's important to think positively, absolutely. But it's even more important to help reframe and unlearn your negative patterns to automatically talk to yourself negatively, right? You lose 30% when you're around the wrong people, and you only gain 15 when you're around good people. So if I can take away 30%, right, that's going to help my performance quite extensively. So how do we help reframe someone from taking something negative and turning it into either neutral or more positive thinking, versus I'm just going to talk positively, which is going to overcome the internal negative talk that I'm already doing to myself? It's kind of counterintuitive to focus on that. But that is the most critical piece of it. How do you tackle the yet to happen, that fear, which is really that thief of joy?
Absolutely. And you mentioned about being present where you're at. And that is so critical and important. So what kind of a mindset people can have in their routine day-to-day life?
So everyone has different routines. And if you don't know when you're at your best, start to just be very present to when you feel like you can take on more. Start there. Doesn't have to be these huge breakthroughs. Find the times of the day where you feel yourself. You feel like everything is hitting on all cylinders, where you feel like you can do no wrong. Sometimes that's in the middle of the day. For me, it's the morning. I am a morning bird. It is my creative space. It is where I do all my strategy. So I optimize my mornings. And in order to do that, that means I have to go to bed earlier. So some people are night owls. So I may miss some opportunity, and I don't focus on all the things I'm missing. I focus on what I'm setting myself up for to be able to create the space for me to be present, because I'm putting myself in the best space to do it based off of how I am. There is no one size fits all. It doesn't mean you have to go cold plunge. It doesn't, right? But there's a place for that, right? But there's a whole set of tools that are hitting all of us so many different ways. Maybe start to journal, once a day. Give yourself a forecast of where you're at in the morning, and then write where you're at the end of the day. Start to figure out your trend, your pattern. Like, those are things that you can control, right? And when you start to put yourself in a space where you can control and be present and find ways and patterns and habits that you need to break that aren't suiting you, or sharpen the things that are strengthening you, that gives you a whole blueprint where you don't have to rely on others, because it really becomes a you versus you consideration. So you can, present yourself in the best role for the whole. And that's where you're allowed to be selfish and do it unapologetically. And there's, sometimes you want to, Work on health. Maybe health is something that's really holding you back from a whole host of different ways to be present. Maybe you're drinking too many Mountain Dews, and maybe you start small. Everyone wants to think about these big things, but it's what are those one or two things that can really set you up to make you think and actually be different than you are. Because if you were already where you wanted to be, you wouldn't be struggling.
Absolutely. And starting out small is so powerful. A lot of people think that, just one or two things is not going to do anything for me.
Mm-hmm.
Always remember, little hinges swing big doors.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm hearing from you is bringing that sports attitude, because as you said, you had to sacrifice a lot. Like probably most of the other youngsters and teenagers were having party and you were right there consistently going for practice and discipline and that exercise. And that discipline really helps in showing up daily and showing up every day. So basically what you're talking about is having that champion mindset in day-to-day lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's easier said than done, but it is something that we all have access to. We all have access to that. It is a choice, not chance. You have to choose that. It's not what you are capable of. It is what you are willing to do. You can have all the talent in the world, right? You can be in a room and have imposter syndrome because you think, oh, I'm around all these executives. But I was 26 years old working on a $10 billion merger acquisition assignment with very executive, very smart individuals. And what I found out is we were all just trying to figure it out. You don't need to put people on a pedestal. If you're in the room, you deserve to be in the room. So give yourself the grace to be able to lean into that.
Absolutely. And what you're talking about is, all of these strategies and tactics lead to high performance. So share with us, you have worked with NFL and all the results as to give us the details about it and how that is emerging and what have you observed?
So I think one of the biggest things, you really have to focus on mindset and the why behind the you, right? Like, why are you doing what you're doing? Like, what is your highest aim? And more often than not, confidence is the commonality across all sports, all levels, no matter if you're in sport or not. Confidence is something that is giving yourself the grace, but knowing that you're willing to do the work that you must to get to where you want to go. And sometimes that means put yourself in proximity around others who are better. So you have to humble yourself. You have to come with a humble sincerity to put yourself in a room of people who are Hall of Famers, people who have successfully already produced the outcomes that you aim to not only hit, but beat. That's humbling. So being able to be uncomfortable and still perform effectively well, that's the magic. And it's sometimes just being in mere proximity to others and know that there's no ego in this. Strive for meaning, understand what is the values that what are the values that you stand in so you can shoot for your purpose. And until you understand the value piece of this, reputation is external based. You're one incident away from that changing. Values, that's you. You have control over that. So putting yourself in the space to say, well, how can I make things a little bit more tangible? I'll give you an example. I had an NFL athlete, unbelievable stats. He's currently in the NFL. And what was really interesting about this was he was having confidence issues, but his stats said everything he was doing right. So you have to give him the space to let him feel that. But at the same time, he is earning his dollar and doing really well for the organization. So now it's like, okay, well, what's really happening? And you need to kind of take a step back and really listen to comprehend and understand what he's actually saying. And what we started to realize was going back to what we talked about these little small bites, these small habits, these small opportunities culminating into big gains. what we did was we broke the actual NFL game down to what part he plays within that, which became so much more bite-sized. So an NFL game is 210 minutes. Okay.
Mhm.
And he is in about 50 to 60 plays. So that, and each play takes, I asked him, how many minutes or seconds does each play take? And he goes, about 5 to 6 seconds. I said, okay, so let me do the math. So you're telling me about 5 to 6 minutes is going to determine 210?
Mm.
And so I gave him the space to just consider it, and we sat still. It's not about me solving the problem. It's about creating the space, give perspective, right? This is effectiveness. So he can gap up because he needs to choose to do it. You know what he came back with? We took away the negative talk. You know what he said? All I need is 5 minutes of greatness. Boom. But that's such a tangible thing we all can do. Like, let's break that day up and make it bite-sized and give yourself the opportunity to put yourself in the place to reduce that negative talk. So then you can focus on applying and being effective and controlling what you can control. So that's an example of something that's near and dear.
Yeah, no, that's very powerful. So you talk about creating culture with connections.
Mhm.
So whether it's high-performing team or organizations, how can they go about it?
So you have to meet people where they're at. What does that mean? Culture really is a combination of two really critical components. It's language and it's relationships. And my dear mentor, John King, he is a pioneer in organizational culture and design. He wrote the book Tribal Leadership, and I'm mentored by him. And we talk about this a lot, about, high performing cultures. Meeting people where they're at and creating a language in which you operate with is important, because then you no longer tolerate language that does not meet the values that you all stand in. Okay. So creating and meeting others where they're at, no matter where they're at, so you can give them the space to be able to go up, is important. And of course, relationships are critical, right? Understanding, below the surface, because culture happens one relationship, one person at a time. Most people think it happens in groups. It doesn't. Culture happens when you feel you've broken down before you're breaking through, and you feel you've gotten all the awards in the world. I am great, you are not. And you look left and right and realize that success is an infinite game, and you're never going to hit that thing, because you hit that thing and you want more. And what it does is it forces you to be in a conscious state of, man, my life's not great right now. If I could just be around people who think bigger, maybe something could change. And that right there, that's when you start to find others within the organization who feel that same way. You create those relationships and that language of something bigger. So then we start saying we are great together. And then it becomes an ecology of leadership and innovators and thinkers, which then builds a culture.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way I see it often. And it's hard because most organizations kind of stay in the I am great, you are not, that power complex. But it's bypassing that power complex and really, truly, authentically leaning into bypassing that, power for meaning. What are you going to contribute? Right? Really focusing on highest aim, things that are bigger than any one self, but understanding the role in which you serve for the whole.
Yeah, I really like that. Serve for the whole. And when you do that, it goes back again to one of my favorite examples, that for rowing competitions, that there are athletes in that. Now think about it. If everybody's not rowing in the same direction, there's no way your team is going to win. And organizations or entrepreneurs with their teams, it's the same thing. If not, you gotta bypass, because in that, everybody's got a spot. Everybody is playing a role, and then it comes together to serve the whole. Very powerful. So tell us about how you have pulled all of these learnings, and you did share that you have created a lab, and how are you making that difference?
So what I realized as I was transitioning in different parts of my life, right? So sports was such a huge component of my life. And then I aspired to play in the Olympics, and they had taken top out of the Olympics that year when I had graduated in '09. The economy had collapsed. So that's an important thing, because that was a pivotal point for me to decide, make a choice. Am I going to survive this, or am I going to thrive? So I'm going to go back to my habits and rituals of working out, doing things that I'm very comfortable with, so I can start to get uncomfortable and still function well. Right? So for me, it was all about, how do you transition? And everybody did that. And what I realized is there was no tools out there that helped with that transition. How do you drive corporate athleticism? How do you not only get into the role, but how do you thrive in the role? And then how do you learn how to fail fast? There were no tools showing how, or creating the space for you to understand, well, what are my biases? Why am I holding myself back? So what we did was, I'm with my science background, I think it's super important to encapsulate how we're all wired too. So there's the psychology aspect, but there's also the neuroscience considerations of how we operate, how we're wired, and why we are doing certain things. So we can help reframe. So we can help put ourselves in the best situation. So what we did was we created the ability to map individuals based off of their competition, people, their well-being, and trainability capacities across a whole host of different things. And it's based off of values, not beliefs, which is a very important thing. Values can't be taught. And skills can. So we built that. And then what we did was we were able to create a system where we can measure and help you understand your emotions through text message. So there's no app, none of that, because we all have 50 million apps. So we thought, how do we meet people where they're at in the language that they understand, to be able to give them a tool of self-talk to help them reframe in real time, whether I'm able to be there with them or not. And we created a mind lab that really has a good science, but also psychology aspect to evolving your mindset.
Oh, that's very powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are there any final tips that you would like to give to our audience, to bring out that high performance mindset?
It's okay to not get it right on the first go. That doesn't mean you quit. When you have that moment that your mind and everything in your body is telling you to quit, all I'm asking you to do is just take one more step. Give it one more day. Give it one more phone call, because every outcome can change from one interaction.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a pretty powerful thing that we're all going to face in different things. And this is personal too, like personal life, your professional life. And I really think it could help. It can help you in a very big way to just give it one more day.
And where can people find you? How can they connect with you? Share more about your program.
Yeah. So please feel free to go to successbeyondgameday.com. And what's really great is this is not just a sports consideration, right? I mean, this is really around how do you leverage that vehicle of sports where it's a common global language. And you can sign up for a mind lab that's fully automated, and you can have access to me through that, right? But you can access everything through the website. So you go in there, and what's great is there's a whole host of tools that some may work really well and some may not be a fit, but it gives you the option to meet you where you're at. So that's the best place. And you can, follow me on Instagram. We do a lot across a lot of market verticals and athletes and corporations, executives, you name it. And I think it's a good place to just follow. And we do a lot of giveaways and scholarships. So my Instagram handle is Samantha S. Card. So yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Any last tips for our audience?
Fail often and fail fast. Ego has no place here. And you can do it. I mean, what if it works instead of what if it doesn't? What if it does?
Absolutely. And Samantha, here's what I can tell you. I've not met anybody who is perfect all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's also something to think about is that if you're perfect, then there is no room for improvement. And if there's no room for improvement, how can you get better and become that perfect? So perfectionism is a paradox in itself.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for joining us and sharing the powerful insights.
Oh, thank you for having me. I love the platform, and I love what your show stands for. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you, listeners, for joining us, because you are the life and blood of this show. Reach out to us. Let us know how can we support you to live the best life you can, because not only you deserve it, but also because you're special. You're part of our family. So keep on reaching out to us as you always do. I really appreciate you. And thank you, Juan, for making everything technically possible. Be well and take care until next time.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who've experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyaparekh.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. We look forward to you joining us next week.